here with another Transformers review, and today I will be reviewing the ToyWorld Grant, which is not exactly a figure that I've been wanting for a very, very long time, but this is the exact same mold that I've been wanting for a very, very long time, ever since I very first saw it. Metallic version advertised on Big Bad Toy Store, or was it TF Stores? It was one of those two online Transformer stores. Anyway, I put in a pre-order for it essentially, and it never got made, or something happened and it just never got charged, whatever, it just never happened for a metallic version of Fortress Maximus. Anyway, as I'll go into more detail for my Christmas special this year, I went to Fan Expo in Dallas back in, I think, June 2024, or June this year, and it was awesome, very awesome. And he's the only thing I got that wasn't like autographs and things like that while I was there. It was, all I can say is that it was a good deal. I looked at it as like actually a fair deal for the figure. This is actually fairly G1 accurate as far as the shape and all that, being very boxy. But I love the fact that they made him really boxy, but also fairly articulate. Because as you can see in this pose, it's fairly dynamic considering, well, how most Titans are. Like, I think the modern Titans can probably pull this off, but then again, they're not generally recently as boxy as they were in G1. Now, one thing I'll say is that he does have some very stiff joints, but I just want to go ahead and show off some of his robot mode stuff. He does have the flip out waist guns, which I think is pretty cool. And one thing I don't even think it's in the instructions, so I just figured this out by accident not too long ago, but there is actually a wheel that shows like stats. I guess since he's a city bot, I guess they're trying to say he has like maxed out stats, or they're just being lazy with it. But I do think that's cool that when you push it in, it does reveal stats. So that's pretty cool. Obviously, because he is a headmaster, he can't really look up and down. He can only really look side to side, but I don't hold that against him. There is this flip out side gun that you can pull out for robot mode, but it's typically for his alt modes, but that is something you can do. Already pulled out the hip guns. He does have little wrist guns that you can flip out, which I think is pretty cool. Pretty sure that's what the original Fortress Maximus and Grand Max also had. Just flip up things. And this isn't exactly a tangent, but seeing this guy, having this guy in hand, and then also having and seeing this other one, I don't believe it's the same company, but it's another third-party company that has done a Metroplex that I think is about this size, or about the size of the original one. And it's almost as boxy as the original one, but it's more cartoon accurate as far as the look, so it's not as boxy. But it's like supposed to be pretty articulate from the looks of it. I think it's like $250 online, so I might get him eventually. That's pretty much it for what can be really done in the robot mode. I mean, there's also these that you could open up, but that's not real. That's more for his alt modes. I will say I do like the way these flaps can move back. Makes me think of, I know it's not really cape, but it just gives me a feel, I guess maybe more like coattails, whatever you want to call them, but I think they're still pretty cool. Articulation, like I said, the head is not on a ball joint, it's just on a little swivel, and it definitely cannot do a full 360. Arms can do a full 360, although it does, this joint, which is more for a transformation, does tend to be a little loose because all these joints are really stiff, and unfortunately the articulation on the arms is a little bit more limited, so you can't go as far out as some. He does have a bicep rotation, over 90-degree bend at the elbow, which I think makes up for the lack of outward arm motion to a degree, and then wrist rotation. And I love that the hands are, and the shape of the arms is still very G1-esque to the toy and all that, but his hands do open up. Not super detailed, but they do open up. And then comes with a red rifle, molded red plastic. I will say there is one gun that he doesn't come with that would typically be pegged in right here, but considering it's not on the instructions, I guess they just didn't make one for him. I don't know if their Fortress Maximus has one or not, but that is something that the original one had. But then the original one also had cog and some other accessories that the smaller one doesn't have. But I will say I do love the smaller city formers just because they're much more manageable. Anyway, but continuing on with articulation, you do get a waist rotation on a somewhat soft ratchet. Legs can go forward that far. Let's try see other city bots kick that far that easily. Good. And rotates back that far. Thigh rotation. 90-degree bend at the knee. Ankle tiltage, a lot of that. And then, of course, you can bend the feet a little bit, but that's also really more for a transformation. And then, I guess he can, well, if you rotate the arm up like that, you can get him to do the full splits. So that's pretty much it for articulation. And I think I'll go ahead and just do one little comparison. And here we have the Kabaya Gum Kit Metallic version Fortress Maximus kit. He kind of resides in my desk. He would be my normal standard desk spot, but I do so much YouTube stuff up here that I just have to constantly move him. So I just kind of keep him in city mode if we want to pan over in this drawer right here, because it's nice to kind of see him in there every time I open up to get out my journal stuff. So that's, I think, pretty funny or interesting. I will say I don't have all his accessories out right now, mainly just because I don't want him to get lost. But one thing, the gun that I was talking about specifically that they didn't include on this guy, it's pretty much, I'm assuming for Grant, it would be a red version of this, but just a little small two-barreled gun that also acts as, I guess, as a little tower gun in base mode, which would go on the back of the leg right there. And of course, he doesn't come with a master sword or anything like that. But the only accessory that I would be showing off that he doesn't have out right now would be the pretty much a blue version of this and a lot smaller. Obviously, this is a Kabaya Gum Kit, so its articulation is much more limited, much more accurate to the original G1 articulation. I'm pretty sure the original one probably had some outward motion, but I could be wrong on that. Like I said, I've never had that one, although I would love to have one someday. But yeah, so I think this is a really good update or upgrade, so to speak. If it was Fortress Maximus, I do think it's kind of funny that the guns on both of these guys are actually about the same size, which I think is really funny considering that he is significantly smaller than him. Let's go ahead and pop off his head so we can take a closer look at that focus noggin. As you'll notice, all the stickers on this guy, I don't think they come applied because I bought this at the convention, and I'd say it's very, very gently used, as in they pretty much, I think all they did was put on the stickers. I will say, I don't know the name of the little headmaster for Grand Max. It just might be Grand. I'm not sure, but it's he's pretty loose, at least right here. It's like his legs are pretty wobbly, but I think he's a pretty decent headmaster considering that he's so tiny and he has such great articulation. I guess the arms can go, whoops, and that's one reason why I don't like messing with headmasters like this, even though they are really articulated. If you're not careful, things will pop off really easily because they're so small. Anyway, but yeah, I think he's pretty cool for a little headmaster. But like I said, I'm probably not going to mess with him terribly much just because I don't want to lose any pieces. And I guess for comparison, I'll go ahead and take off Kabaya Gum Kit's Cerebros and just, or not, well, Cerebros or I'd say Max. Fortress. There we go. Fortress, because it is more accurate to Fortress than it is to Cerebros. Although that tiny little mouth you see on there, that was courtesy of me because there was no mouth on there. There was just like it was. Though as you can see, it's so super tiny, so there's not much space for, well, to add a face. So here we have him in his battleship mode, which I think is pretty cool. I will say it's the easiest mode to get him into from robot mode. Out of the 3 modes that he had, well, 2 alt modes he has outside of robot mode. One thing I think that's pretty nifty, although these ratchets are so stiff, I don't think it's necessarily, well, necessary, but I do like that there's these little flaps that snap into here to keep them in line. Like, he is really sturdy, because I remember the Titan's Returns one. Now granted, he is smaller than Titan's Returns Fortress Maximus, but Titan's Returns Fortress Maximus, the legs would start to sag after a while. Like, it didn't take very much. Even if the ratchets were strong enough to hold up the legs, just that one click was enough to just let them droop down, and you had to kind of support the whole thing as you were holding it. Whereas this one, pick it up and it just feels really solid. And for comparison, here we have Kabaya. Whoops, forgot this one little step. There we are. And now we have Kabaya Gum Kit, Fortress Maximus, and I forgot another thing. Okay, I feel a little silly. Ugh. But here we have him in his Fortress mode, which I think is pretty cool, especially since he's a Gum Kit. I will say, though, since I've had him for a while and I have transformed him a bunch, I will say there are some things that are starting to go on him, unfortunately. I don't know if this is more accurate to the G1 toy or if this is, but I do like, because if I remember right, in the G1 one, he would sit in here, or maybe he sat back in here or in here. I know for this toy, he sits in here, you flip that out, and then he just sits here in his head mode. Something like that. I think that's more for his city mode anyway, but I do like this Fortress Maximus, don't get me wrong. It's just, it's a little cheap plastic model kit, so of course eventually it is probably going to, well, I mean, like, I'm terrified. I mean, I'm not trying to make this into a review of the Gum Kit one, but if you look in there, like, it's not, focus, there's not much holding that hand in place, and there is a tiny bit of stress marks on the edge, and once that goes, this hand is not staying in, and I'd have to glue it in place, which would then, well, then the hand wouldn't be able to spin at all. But yeah, that's about it for that. And then one thing of note, there is a note that comes with the actual figure that says to be very careful when splitting this all up, because there is a couple of pegs in here, or at least one peg, and it's right there, and it could snap very easily if you're not careful. And then they would, I guess, move separate. I guess worst case scenario, if they were to break, these just wouldn't move in tandem anymore. But still, obviously want to use care so that that doesn't end up being the case. have him in his second base mode as described in the instructions. I'd say it looks pretty cool. I did notice something when I was transforming him. If it's something that you want to do, if you want to make it, I guess, a little bit more compact, because I don't see any other reason for it to have this range of motion. But if you want to, I don't know, make it more compact, I don't really see the point necessarily in doing that. But it is something that is there if you want to do it. I will say one kind of sort of downside to this version is that it doesn't really have like a what looks like an entrance into the base mode, unless you want to say that this is the door and it's just shut right now, that sort of thing. But I think it still looks pretty cool. I will say one kind of downside to this ramp right here, but of course you can just lift it up a little bit. It looks a little wonky, but it's better than it being lifted off the tabletop or wherever you have it on, because for whatever reason, this arm, it just does not like to stay tabbed in place. It just pops out. But that's, I think, my biggest gripe with this figure. And then I guess my second biggest gripe is this little ramp thing, how it's just hollow and not smooth. Like, neither of them are completely smooth, but although you could argue that this is like a conveyor slash, I don't know, staircase for giant transformers and all that. So I think that's pretty fair. But I still think that this is a really good desk bot. Like, who knows, maybe when if I end up having my own desk somewhere in the civilian world, when I get out, maybe I'll have him on my desk, assuming I'm not afraid someone's going to steal him because, you know, collector's item. But one thing you can do, well, probably can do, although it's not listed in the instructions, is plug this in right here, although it looks like there isn't quite the same clearance, so I guess you could put it at an angle. But that's one thing I did like about the Kabaya one and this one, or the Kabaya one, is that you could plug the gun in to make it look like another tower, but it does look like you can plug it barely into that screw hole, so even if it's not an official port, don't push it in there too hard, just put it in there a little bit and then you have another tower. Because I will say, this base mode specifically does look a little bit short, and for the instructions, assuming that you didn't just go to this mode directly or from Battleship mode to this mode, it does say that you can go ahead and put the Headmaster in there, and I'm sure if you so desired, you could also put the Headmaster in either of these two compartments over here. Although there is no use explained for those in the instructions, they are just there. So maybe they were for their Fortress Maximus, maybe for other things, I really don't know. But I still think it's a pretty cool city mode, especially for something that is about the size of a standard leader class, or at least an older standard leader class figure. And for comparison, here we have him with the Kabaya Gum Kit in its city mode. And I honestly think this one looks just a little bit better, but that's also because, like I said, like with the ramp, like this is actually smooth. I quite like that. I also like that this part is open. There actually was, I think, Wind Charger is the name of the character, but there's a tiny little Kabaya Wind Charger that goes in here, and there's actually a little rampy thing that you can lift to launch him out of there somewhat. There's a few little things, and then there's a little spring launcher thing to launch Power Glide, because he does come with a Power Glide. This came in 3 little model kits, and it was like each one had its own little gimmicky thing, and then you, of course, would combine all 3 of them into this, and I don't think anyone in their right mind would end up, you know, swapping or taking them back into those 3 parts. Anyway, just another little thing that you can do. I think it was in one of the instructions that you can plug in the Master Sword up there, giving a super tall tower, but obviously that's not going to fit in my desk drawer. So that is about it for the Transformers, or I shouldn't say Transformers, because it's not Transformers third party, but that is about it for ToyWorld Grant. And if you like this review and you'd like to see more, please click that like and subscribe button to see more. Until next time, have a good one, everyone.